Hi. We recently conducted a survey with our clients and our advisors, basically using a questionnaire that was developed back in the 1960s. Now we adjusted things for inflation to make it more applicable to today's people. And what we found was the results in our survey echoed what we saw throughout psychological studies. And essentially, what we were doing is we're trying to test whether or not our clients and our professional investment advisors were considered rational in terms of traditional financial theory. Now, economists have always assumed that we have 100% rationality 100% of the time. Obviously, at SEM, we've disagreed with that, and we follow a line of finance called behavioral finance. And the reason that we do that was found in our survey. Now, 78% of the people surveyed, including both individual clients and professional advisors, were considered irrational in terms of traditional financial theory. Now, that doesn't make it wrong. What we wanted to prove was that regardless of whether you were educated in terms of how you should react versus how you will react, we found that people were human. And let me dig in a little bit to what this survey was looking at. So everybody was offered a choice. First choice, you can get a guaranteed $5 million, or this person was offering you an 89% chance to still get 5 million, 25 million at a 10% chance, but there's a 1% chance of getting nothing. Overwhelmingly, people did this. I said, give me a guaranteed $5 million. That's great. Now, we did have, like I said, 22% of the people were rational because statisticians, economists, and everybody would say, look, the potential value of this is so much greater than this. You should always choose this. Well, again, humans would say, give me $5 million guaranteed. Now, the real test came in situation number two. Situation two said, we'll offer you 11% chance of getting 5 million, but now you have an 89% chance of getting nothing. Or we can offer you a 10% chance of getting 25 million or a 90% chance of getting nothing. Now, what we found then is most people chose this scenario. They said, okay, there's only a 1% difference here, but 5 million versus 25 million is a whole lot of money. And there's a lot of behavioral biases factored into there, but what economists and traditional financial theory would say is if you weren't willing to gamble 1% here, you shouldn't gamble 1% here. So if you answered this and then this, you're considered irrational. They also considered you irrational if you answered this and this. The only two correct answers, according to economists, were these two, because if you ran the numbers, they would say they have a higher perceived value. Now, there's a lot of different biases in there. Risk aversion, loss aversion, some personal biases, but the main thing we wanted to highlight is there's this economic concept that's key to traditional financial theory, which is everybody can calculate what economists call utility. Now, utility is the value of something, and they expect you to consistently apply utility theory to every decision, but nobody's going to sit there and get out their calculators in the real world and do this. And what we found is through our studies and psychological studies throughout the last 20 years is based on your mood, possibly what you had for breakfast, how you're feeling that day, if you had a fight with your spouse, if something was really weighing on you, you're going to answer these questions differently than if some of those things changed. So what that tells us is traditional financial theory doesn't work. And if you're following an investment philosophy that says you should stay invested all the time, you should always buy when the market goes down, you should, that's doing you a disservice because there's going to be a certain point in your life where you're not going to feel like doing what you should do. You're going to adjust to what you feel like is the right decision. And with all these complications in there, nobody's going to calculate the probabilities of you making a lot of money. I always laugh when I watch poker on TV. I'm like, I'd be really good at poker if I had the percentage chance of winning. Well, that's what real world is like, is you don't have this. So now you're very rarely going to be 100% rational 100% of the time. Therefore, we follow a behavioral financial approach to our investment philosophy. In other words, we want to adjust what we're doing with your portfolios based on your financial plan, based on your cash flow strategies, your personal situation, and most importantly, your personality. You hear a lot of people say, well, you're young, you should always be in stocks. You're getting older, you should not have stocks. There's some people that could be 70 years old and perfectly comfortable all the way invested in the stock market. There could be 30-year-olds who are uncomfortable having too much money in the stock market. So what's most important to understand from this survey is stop listening to traditional advice where they say you should do this and you should do that. Find somebody that'll help you adjust to what you will do, because look, we're all human. We can't be 100% rational 100% of the time, and there's nothing wrong with that.